Okay guys, so today we're doing lessons 2-2 and 2-3. So in your composition books, at the top of your page, I want you to write 2-2 and 2-3. We're doing adding integers and subtracting integers. We're going to start looking at adding integers. So the first thing I want you to write, once you put 2-2 and 2-3 at the top of your page in your composition book, is we're going to write a few rules. And you can just write them in the middle towards the top because we're going to draw a big box around them. It's the rules for adding integers. Well, it starts out, and we're just looking at the signs. So this means a positive number plus a positive number. We know that one because it's the one we've done over and over since like first, second grade. So a positive number plus a positive number is just a positive number, so it equals positive. Just like 2 plus 3 is 5. We know that positive 2 plus positive 3 equals positive 5. So then we're going to look at a negative plus a negative. So this one works. Sorry, I about unplugged my cord. This one works just like adding. A positive and a positive is a positive. A negative plus a negative just equals a negative. Okay, you still just add those numbers and keep the negative sign. So then the only other one we have to look at, which is the complicated one, a positive plus a negative. And it doesn't matter on the order. That could mean a negative plus a positive. Either one, they're the same. When you're doing this, when there's different signs and you're adding, you actually subtract the two numbers. You subtract their absolute values, okay? And the answer depends on the larger digit. So if we had a negative 9 and a positive 3, 9 is bigger and it's negative, so your answer would be negative. But if it was 9 plus negative 3, 9 is still bigger and it's positive. So your answer, I always just put the sign of the larger number. Okay, so write that on your page. And you can even draw a big box around it, star it, do whatever you need to do to make it where you're going to look at that. So I'll let you get that down. If you still need to write it down, you can pause the video. Okay, and now we're going to look at example 1.
Okay guys, so from the rules you just wrote down, we've got find -1 plus -5. So we are adding with two negatives. So just as if they were positive, we are going to keep that sign and add the numbers. So it becomes -6. They also show us on a number line, when you're adding, you start at -1 right here, and we are adding 5 to it. Adding -5 to it. So we have to go back 5 more spaces to show that we end up at -6. So what I want you to do is write down these 3 problems at the bottom, 1A, 1B, and 1C. And I want you to pause the video and try to work those out on your own. And then press play to watch me work them out.
Okay, so on those 3 examples, 1A, 1B, and 1C, on 1A we have -3 plus -4. We are adding with the same sign. So we add and keep that sign. So 3 plus 4 is 7. And since they're both negative, we keep it. It is -7. Okay. On 1B, we have -6 plus -14. We're adding with the same sign, so we add and keep our sign. We know it's negative, and we have 6 plus 14, which is 20, so -20. Okay, and then on problem 1C, we have -7 plus -2. We're adding with the same sign, so we keep that negative. 7 plus 2 is 9. So -7 plus -2 is -9. Did you get them right? Good. Okay. So now let's look at example 2.
Okay, so now we're going to look at example 3. We're going to skip example 2 because it's just more of the same problems. So for the first one, A, it says find each sum. We have -3 plus 6. So now we're adding with different signs. We have a -3 and a +6. So we're going to take the difference, which means you're going to look at each digit without the sign. So we have a 3 and a 6. We're not looking at positive or negative right now. We just have a 3 and a 6. You take the bigger one and subtract the smaller one from it. So we have 6 minus 3, and it's not because that's a -3. Okay, 6 minus 3 is 3. Sorry for this terrible handwriting. Then we go back and look. We said 6 was bigger. Now we look. 6 is positive, so my answer is also positive. So it came out to positive 3. On the number line, they show us when you're adding a positive, you go right, get bigger. When you're adding a negative, you go left. So we start out at negative 3, and we added a positive 6 to it, which puts us at positive 3. Okay, the next one, we have 1 plus negative 4. So we are adding with a positive and a negative. So 1 plus negative 4, we're going to take 4 minus 1 and get 3. Then we go back and look. 4 is negative, so it's going to be negative 3. And again, they show us on a number line. So I want you to try these two problems at the bottom now, 3A and 3B. Pause it, work them out, and then when you press play, I'll work them out for you.
All right, so on those two examples after example 3, we have 3A and 3B. A, we have negative 3 plus 6, okay? So what we have to do, we're adding with a positive and a negative. So we look at just the digits or their absolute value. So I have a 3 and a 6. You take the bigger one minus the smaller one, no matter what their signs are. 6 minus 3 is 3. Then I go back and look. If I cover them up again, we knew 6 was bigger, and the sign of 6 is that it's positive. So it is positive 3. Okay, now looking at example B, we have 1 plus negative 4. Again, if you just completely cover up the signs, I have a 1 and a 4. You take the bigger one minus the smaller one. Then I go back and look, not using the signs, just the digits or their absolute value. 1 and 4, we know 4 is bigger, so now I look at what sign it has, and it has a negative out front. So it's going to be a negative 3. Okay, if you missed it, see if you can figure out what you did wrong or where you messed up. Or hopefully by me going over it, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I see what I did. Now let's look at example 4.
Okay, so now looking at example 4, on A, we have 12 plus negative 6. And they only put them in parentheses so that we don't have a plus and a minus right next to each other. That's the only thing the parentheses are for. So 12 plus negative 6. So I am adding with a positive and a negative. So we take our two digits. So I have a 12 and a 6. You take the bigger one minus the smaller one. 12 minus 6 is 6. And then we go back and look. We said 12 was bigger and 12 is positive, so it is positive 6. Okay. On B, we have negative 7 plus 5. So again, I'm adding with a negative and a positive. They're different signs. So I take the digits without looking at what sign they are and just do the bigger one minus the smaller one. So 7 minus 5 is 2. I go back and look. We said 7 was bigger and 7 is negative. So it is going to be a negative 2. So now I want you to try 4A and 4B. You'll pause it, work them out. And then when you press play, I'll work them out for you.
Okay, so we're just looking at a few more of those same type of problems, 4A and 4B. I wanted you to try on your own. So if you haven't yet, pause the video and try these, and then you can see if you got them right as I go over them. So 4A, we have negative 20 plus 4. So we look at what rule it follows. I'm adding with a negative and a positive. They are different, so I'm taking the difference. You're subtracting. Again, you're looking at just the digits. So I have 20 minus 4, which is 16. And then I go back and look, 20 was bigger, and 20 is a negative number. So I use that sign. So negative 16. Okay, looking at 4B, again, we're adding with a positive and a negative, so different signs. So if I cover up the signs, I have a 16 and a 5. So I subtract them. 16 minus 5 is 11. I come back up, we know 16 is bigger, we look and it is positive. When there's nothing there, there's an imaginary plus sign, so it's positive. So 11 is positive. Okay, now we're going to look at 2-3. So now we're going to look at subtracting integers. So what I actually want you to do, let me erase the board. I want you to go ahead, you can turn to a new page or just at the bottom. We're going to write some more of those rules. And we're going to put a big box around them again. So now, subtracting tends to be the hardest one for everybody. And it's because mainly you're having to, first of all, change it to an addition problem, then follow your addition rules again. So it has extra. So what I want you to do, there's 2 ways that I know of to help you. There might be more. If you have a different way, you're more than welcome to share it with me. But 2 different ways that I know of to try and help you remember for subtracting, because we've changed it to addition. So 2 ways to remember how to change it. The first one, just write this out somewhere. Keep, change, change. Okay? And then I'll give you an example with that. Keep, change, change. KCC. So, for example, if I have 3 minus 8, go ahead and write the 3 minus 8. And then I'm going to write it again under it so you see what we're doing. So when it says keep, it means you keep the first number as is. Leave it alone. Keep. Change the sign between them. Change the sign of your second number. Okay? And I'm going to add parentheses because I don't like a plus next to a minus. So it went from 3 minus 8 to 3 plus negative 8. So now we've changed it to an addition rule. Now we follow our addition rules. I'm adding with a positive and a negative. So you subtract. 8 minus 3 is 5. And 8's bigger and it is negative. So it's negative 5. Okay, so keep, change, change. The other way that I want you to write down, either under that or beside it, is called change the sign, add a line. Change the sign, add a line. That one's kind of a way to remember. Change the sign, add a line. You can sing it, I don't care. Okay, so what this one means, we'll just use the same number, 3 minus 8. It just means change the sign between them, add a line for your second number. Change the sign, add a line. And then now if you notice, we're back to over here, solving that problem to get negative 5. If it had been, say we had 2 negatives beside each other, it works the same way. Change the sign, add a line. Okay, now it's an addition with 2 positives, so you just add. Okay, so that's the 2 ways you can box those, draw stars around them. Maybe put a star by the one that you like better. Again, I don't care, and if you know another way, let me know. Okay, so now we're going to look at example 1 under subtracting integers.
Okay, so example 1, we're going to be finding the difference. So 6 minus 15, so we first have to change it to an addition problem. Then we follow our addition rules. So 6 minus 15, we keep, change, change. So it becomes 6 plus negative 15. Now we're adding with a positive and a negative. So since they're different signs, following our addition rules, I just take the digits, 15 and 6, take the bigger one, minus the smaller one. 15 minus 6 is 9. Then when I go back and look, 15 was bigger, so I see that 15 was negative, so it is negative 9. Okay, on B, we have negative 7 minus 8, so I'm going to change the sign, add a line. So you just change the sign between them and add a line to that second number. So it is now negative 7 plus negative 8. And since they are the same sign that we're adding with, we are just going to add and keep that sign, and we get negative 15. So what I want you to do now is try 1A and 1B at the bottom. Use either one, either keep, change, change, or change the sign, add a line, whichever one is easier for you. And then pause the video so you can work those out, and then press play and I will work them out for you so you can see if you got them right or not.
Okay, so looking at example 1, those 2 problems, the first one we have 4 minus 15. So whichever way you choose to use it, keep, change, change, or change the sign, add a line. If we do keep, change, change, here, let me change colors. So we're going to keep, change, change. So I now have 4 plus negative 15. When you're adding with one positive and one negative, you hide the signs and look at the numbers. So we would do 15 minus 4, which is 11. And then I go back, 15's bigger, and it is negative. So negative 11 would be your answer there. So then on the second one, negative 3 minus 12. So we're going to change the sign, add a line. So now I'm adding with the same sign. So you add, so 12 plus 3 is 15, and you keep the sign that they both have. So negative 15.
Okay, so for example 2, we're finding the difference. So on A, we have 9 minus negative 2. So we keep, change, and it becomes 9 plus 2. And then we just add that to get 11. So on example B, we do the same thing. We change the sign, add a line, whichever one you like to use to remember it. And so then it just becomes 3 plus 5, which is 8. So what I want you to do now is try 2A and 2B on your own. You'll pause the video, then press play to see them worked out to check and see if you got it correct.
Okay, looking at example 2, the first one, 18 minus negative 2. So we would keep, change, and now just have 18 plus 2, which is 20. Hopefully you got that one right. Okay, looking at the next one, we have negative 5 minus negative 11. So change the sign, add a line. So I now have negative 5 plus 11. So we're adding with a positive and a negative. So covering up the signs, I have an 11 and a 5. You take the bigger one minus the smaller one. Okay, you get 6. Then you go back and look, 11 was bigger. Look at the sign, it is positive. So positive 6.
Okay, on example 3, it says find the distance between 3 and negative 3 on a number line. And we've talked about before, distance cannot be negative. Distance is always positive. We can use positive and negatives to represent maybe going up or down, but distance itself is never negative. So we use these absolute value lines to make sure we get a positive answer, because absolute value is a number's distance away from 0. And we just said distance can't be negative. So right here, when it says find the distance between two numbers on a number line, we always subtract to do that, because you're finding the difference between those numbers, and difference means we subtract. So we have 3 minus negative 3, and when we use our subtraction rules, keep, change, it becomes 3 plus 3, which is 6, and the absolute value of that is still just 6. So if you look on the number line over here, they even show you from negative 3 all the way to 3 on the number line, it's 6 units. So I want you to try that on 3A and 3B. Remember to use your absolute value lines, because distance is never negative. And excuse me. And you can draw a number line if you want to, but you don't have to. And remember, when you're finding the distance, you subtract them. So pause the video, try those problems, and then press play to watch them worked out.
All right, on example 3, now we're finding distance. So remember, with distance, it's never negative. So we find it using absolute value. So it said find the distance between negative 30 and negative 22. You can draw a number line. Or when you're doing it with absolute value, the difference means subtract. So I have negative 30 minus negative 22. And then I put it in absolute value lines because it's distance, and distance is always positive. It's never negative. So we have keep, change. So I have absolute value of negative 30 plus 22. We're adding with a positive and a negative, so I subtract and keep the sign of the larger number, but it is absolute value, so that would be 8. They have a difference or a distance on the number line of 8. So looking at B, now we have negative 6 and 5. So again, I have absolute value of negative 6 minus 5. Change the sign, add a line. I'm adding with the same sign, so you add and keep that sign. Since it's absolute value means a number's distance away from 0, and we already know distance is never negative. That's why it always becomes a positive answer. So 11.
Okay, so example 4 is a word problem. It says the top of an iceberg is 15 feet above sea level. The bottom of the iceberg is 105 feet below sea level. What is the distance from the top to the bottom of the iceberg? So we'll go back and kind of circle and underline some key information, because we're finding the distance. So just like on the previous problem, we're going to set it up where it's in absolute value and we're subtracting. So it says the top of an iceberg is 15 feet. So that's a number. I'm going to circle that. That's information. Then it says above sea level. So I'm going to underline that, because above sea level lets me know that that 15 is positive. Okay, then it says the bottom of the iceberg is 105 feet. There's another piece of information below sea level. So on that below sea level, that lets me know that 105 is negative. Okay, so we're trying to find the distance from the top to the bottom of the iceberg. So we are going to subtract those numbers. So this is my problem. 15 minus negative 105. And we know from our subtraction rules, we change the sign, add a line. So it becomes 15 plus 105. I'll underline it over here where they have that written. So 15 plus 105 is 120. And we take the absolute value to make sure it is a positive number. So the distance from the top to the bottom of the iceberg is 120 feet. Okay, I'm going to just make you try one of these word problems. So you're going to try the one at the bottom of the screen, okay, number 4. So I want you to pause the video so you can attempt to work that out. Then press play and I will work it out for you.
Okay, so this problem says a gopher begins digging at 7 inches below ground level and stops digging at 16 inches below ground level. How far did the gopher dig? So we're finding a distance again, okay? So we're going to subtract, but let's go back and look. So he begins digging at 7 inches, so there's a number below ground level. That tells me that it's represented with a negative integer. So I have negative 7 minus, because we're looking at two numbers on a number line, the difference between them. Then I have, and he stops digging, here's another number, at 16 inches below ground level again. So we know it's represented by another negative integer. So I have negative 7 minus negative 16. So now using our rules, we have keep, change, change. So I'm adding with a positive and a negative, which means you hide those into signs, and we subtract. 16 minus 7, we get 9. And I go back and look, the bigger number is positive, so it stays positive. But also, since we're talking about distance, you could go back and do absolute value. So it is 9, and so that means how far did the gopher dig? He dug 9 inches.